I'm waiting for it to dry before I brush it out and see if I need to rinse it now or anything, or later, or what. So my little sister kind of got me really mad yesterday. She literally tried to say that she hadn't called or texted even 2 words for 3 months because she was just busy. Thing is, I know people that are busier than her. And you either make time or you don't. I make time for the things that matter and the people that matter. There are times I go, like, a day or 2 later I'll text back. I'm not, always great at getting back right at that moment. Sometimes I have time, sometimes I don't. And most of the time I don't, actually. Usually if it's Jean, I will make a special effort for that. There are certain people I make a special effort for. For anything that is not earth-shatteringly important, wait a few hours. Wait until I'm done with this thing that I can't really put down until it's done. And that's the thing. There are a lot of people who they don't get it. My little sister, she doesn't get it. During all of the stuff that I've talked about that went on with me whenever I was younger, my little sister was a teenager. She was only she was a couple weeks away from being 8-year-old whenever Mom went down. Whenever her dad shoved her in the bathroom, propped her up, and then real quick shut the door. Yeah, there's no question in either my younger brother's mind or mine that he did this on purpose, and he did it specifically so that Mom would be wedged against the door, and that was what happened. She actually fell down in the kitchen, which actually wasn't that far from that bathroom. We saw her dragged into the bathroom. Then, after he put her in there, he waited before he called 911. There's no question in our minds that he wanted her to die. That keeping her on a machine, brain dead, that was a ploy for taxes that my grandparents did. And I'll never forgive my grandmother for that. That's why her official date of death is New Year's. She didn't even, think, wait a couple days. Maybe you don't, make this that day for the rest of their lives. No. She didn't care. My grandmother literally did not care. She did not care who she hurt. She just wanted what she wanted. And my little sister's dad often would leave my little sister with his mom. And my little sister may not understand this, but she looks more like Mom than she thinks she does. He can't look at her half as much as he should be able to. I mean, really look at her. Because whenever he does, he can't take it. Somewhere inside, there's a little piece of humanity in there that has to say, I robbed this little girl of her mother. He may not feel anything in regards to having done that to me and my brother. But our baby sister is his daughter. He didn't just do this. He did it because Mom was leaving. And she was going to take us to Colorado. We were going to start over. You know, she'd already been having us vote on names for a store that she was going to start out. And then he did what he did. And it was because he knew that he was never going to get custody of our little sister. Unlike other people, you know, who actually have been done an injustice, he had already been convicted of child abuse. Not because of me, but one of his older children, I think it was the redhead. I say redhead, but my little sister was also strawberry blonde. But he had a little boy who was younger. I think his oldest was older than I was. But the little one, he'd done some things. And Mom got sole custody because of those things. He's not on that list because of me. He's not on any sort of... He actually was convicted of child abuse. He actually does have this in his history. But what he does is he blames me for all of it. You know, it's just a misunderstanding. Oh yes, such a misunderstanding. You whipped out your ding-a-ling in front of a 6-year-old child and then asked her to touch it. Yes, that is such a misunderstanding. That is not a misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding there. You either keep it in your pants or you don't. You either asked someone to touch it or you didn't. There's no room for misunderstanding here. It was not, oh, she just walked in on me changing. No! You literally sat me down on the couch. Like, you said that you wanted to talk to me because Mom wanted us to be closer and get along, and I really just didn't like you. And then you, did this. I didn't like him. I tried very hard for my mom. But he just made me feel dirty just to be around him. And he was kind of skeevy and just creepy, and I couldn't really explain it. But I wanted my mom to be happy. I guess my mom realized that I didn't really like him, even though I said that I did for her. My mom usually knew whenever we were lying. I just wanted my mom to be happy. There was no misunderstanding. You cannot misunderstand that. You do not whip out your dick and ask a little kid to touch it. That's not okay. And there's no misunderstanding there. And I'm not the reason why he's marked as someone who's done things. He was already, marked beforehand because he'd already done things to one of his own kids. I didn't even know about this until I was an adult. So picture this, you've been blamed for everything wrong in somebody's life most of your life. And in fact, you've been blamed for the things wrong in most people's lives that you know as adults in your life since a young age. My mom didn't, but she also died. So, and all they're doing is using it as a smokescreen. That's actually what my ex-husband does. I feel like I married my little sister's dad in my ex-husband. Not my dad. My little sister's. because he is just as big of a giant douchebag. And there was, that moment whenever he was gonna kill us. So, And I bet if he had managed to, get me first and get away with it, he would have done exactly what Gary did with my little sister. Drop them off with a relative to take care of for a while. Then come in, assert parental rights, and take off. Drop them back off for a while. He could not handle just being a dad. And my little sister got lucky because she had some actual people. But then there are times whenever it really strikes me because she calls the woman that he married mom. Sometimes I just feel like screaming. He took your mom from you. He dragged her from the kitchen, propped her up in the bathroom, and shut the door real fast. She was already down before he did this. She was turning blue. He killed her. Now that's not the sort of thing that I can tell my little sister. So there was a point whenever I was younger, young adulthood, I was going through some stuff. And there was even this point at 18 that I thought that I could protect her from my mom's family by just distancing myself. And it's gotten to the point where I end up feeling like sending my little sister stuff is something, that it's what she wants from me. It's not to actually be a sister. And I've had enough people use me in my life that I'm just not okay with that. Even if I have feelings of guilt. But there's the thing. She was a teenager. And I was going through all this stuff. Half of this stuff I couldn't even tell her. In fact, some of it I straight up promised not to. Because she had heart palpitations if you so much as mentioned her dad at that point. And, I just been held against my will for 6 months. I'd just gone through all of that stuff beforehand, and it was just sort of a dominoes of different things that had happened all at once. And I couldn't talk about this with her. She was a kid. And she hasn't exactly been forgiving about that. Fine. I don't blame her, but I don't want to be used either. You either want to talk to me and know me, or you don't. That's sort of where I'm at. You don't just get to use me for stuff. I get it. My little sister has her own issues. But I have some pretty heavy ones too, and some pretty big secrets that I'm keeping from her. And initially, our brother actually wanted to tell her. And he still hasn't forgiven me, I don't think, for saying no, don't tell her. She loves him, it would destroy her. I mean, you can't exactly go telling your little sister, oh yeah, your dad did this. I mean, because it was hard enough for me to deal with the fact that my grandmother actually admitted to being involved in it. Just the involvement there was too much. Imagine that your dad, his own hands, dragged her there and left her there and did all this on purpose. like, was actually the one to carry this out. That's too much. That's too much. I can barely handle that my grandmother actually told him how to do it with full intentions of him doing it. They had a deal ahead of time. They didn't make this deal after Mom was dead. They made this deal ahead of time. My grandmother wanted him to disappear with our little sister. She wanted control of me. And she wanted, or my little brother, she didn't care which one. And she just wanted to ship whichever other one there was, off. My grandmother literally did not care who she hurt to get what she wanted. And I hate to say this, but whenever you know what, I wasn't glad she died when she died, but I'm glad she's dead. Now I am. Back then I wasn't. I do miss my grandmother sometimes. I guess that's the part that makes it hard. Because you still love people who do these things, but they did these terrible things, and it just fucks with you. And I don't want my little sister to have to feel that. That conflict of emotions. And I also don't want her to hate me and call me a liar. So, I guess I'm a selfish person like that. But her dad did this, and he's a terrible, terrible person. And I can't tell her. And she's promised not to read my journals, which are for my kids to one day know me. But she's not allowed to read them because that's in there. She doesn't know that that's why. But that's in there. So is me agonizing over the fact that I can't tell her and fears that I'll slip up. Because her dad is a fucking murderer. And I've been saying this since I was 7 years old. Nobody wanted to listen because we were little kids. And what's the word of two little kids? We were sitting on the stairs watching this happen, and my little brother didn't even register that I was there anymore. I shook him and he wouldn't respond, so I actually went to go back to the bedroom, and it took me 2 terrifying tries because we almost got caught. But I got one of the pennies to hit the bell on the bookcase at the top of the stairs, and the sound sort of like snapped him out of it. It was the same bell Mom used. Because my little brother would sleepwalk a lot. And if he started to like zone out, or he was sleepwalking, he'd sort of like been, I guess, trained, for lack of a better word, to go back to his room. To go back, where he felt safe. And he went in to my bedroom and laid on the floor. That's where he'd been before, because he didn't want to sleep in his room, so we had like some blankets and pillows set up for him. He went back in and slept next to my bed on the floor. He just went back and laid down. I hate my little sister's father with a burning passion. He took our mom from us over custody of her. And that's another thing, like that reasoning, it could just, like, that's how you destroy somebody. Like, I cannot imagine if somebody told me that I would not somehow feel that I was at fault. And I don't want her to feel that. So that's like another thing. It's not her fault. She was not even 8 years old. There's nothing in there that's her fault. And that's the thing. What do I say? I mean, she's my little sister, and of course I love her. But we barely know each other, and there are so many things I have to keep from her. And I already know what her dad would say if she confronted him. Oh, she's crazy. Her dad is like grandmother. The thing is, though, that I'm not the only one saying it. If you go back, you will also find in paperwork what he did. Specifically. As far as like the pedo stuff. It doesn't take much to cross-reference this. And while I often find myself defending people, like either on social media or otherwise, who can prove that they didn't do anything, there are people who do these things that get away with them. And there are innocent people that get victimized by a broken system. And that is something very real about the world that we live in. My mother's murders went free. One of them lived to an old age and died. Sometimes I feel like she deserved that suffering death for all the pain and suffering that she caused. And that is probably one of my deepest, darkest secrets. As much as I loved my grandmother, I kind of hate her too. The things that she did to me after she got a hold of me. The only silver lining is that she didn't do them to Alex instead. That's the only silver lining. Alex was that kid. He couldn't sleep. He was on my bedroom floor. And even that was only because, we were getting a little too old to share a bed whenever this happened, and he also wet the bed still, so. But he'd come in there, and sometimes I'd reach over the edge of the bed and we'd hold hands. That's really all we could do, and, he played in my room. He slept in my room. He had his own bed and his own toy box, but he really never used it. Except, if he wanted to get a specific toy. After we got out of state custody, that's what it was like. My brother and I had shared a room since he was an infant. It was too much to separate us. And then we were ripped apart again, and my brother and I actually used to be close. And I'm old enough to remember that. So it tends to, I guess, get to me more. That we're not. And that he's done things that are hurtful, things that Mom would have bent us over her butt for. I mean, this is the sort of thing that, she would have rolled in her grave over. Don't drink and drive. Don't do drugs. Don't skip your sister's wedding. He said that would be there, and he was actually supposed to walk me down the aisle, but lo and behold, he drank away his plane ticket. He was going through college for mechanics. He was reaching for the dream he'd had since we were little. And it slipped through his fingers because he decided that alcohol was more important. And my little brother has actually made some pretty big mistakes dealing with stuff. Whether or not I understand that doesn't mean it's any less hurtful. I didn't make any of those mistakes. But I'm still the pariah. You know, the person who's either supposed to meet an impossible standard or be expected to be crazy and just a slut and a whore and just not meet any of them because they decided that because I was mom's daughter that I would become these things because I'm a daughter and because they chose to believe the absolute worst from the time I was born. So a lot of them didn't even have anything to do with me even before my grandmother started up her stuff. My mom's family wasn't the best. My mom was, though. She was infinitely kind, the exact opposite you would expect from an environment like that. She was very strong, but not in the sense of what you would think she could be. I mean, in that sense, but I mean, she was strong enough to remain kind. Even if my mom could have easily become anything but kind, and it would have been completely excusable. Nobody would have blamed her. But she didn't. And if I can be at least a fraction like her, you know, in my life, I'm 29 years old. I'm literally the age that my mother died. I am literally the age my mother was when she died. She was healthy. She had reading glasses, but she was healthy. I think that was like the only real problem that she had with her health. She had reading glasses, and damage from some stuff. So she wasn't even supposed to be able to have kids to begin with, but she has anyway. And you don't know what it's like to sit there and still be something that people consider relatively young, not feel even remotely such, and just my mother was 29 years old. And I'm sorry, I need to stop and pull myself together. Nap time will be over in about 15, 20. And I need to be pulled together for this so that, I can new things. Like, my little sister doesn't really get it. Having more memories makes it harder. Because I know the measure of my mother's character. I knew what she was like whenever she thought that nobody was watching. I know the stupid little things like that pair of tights that she wore that had that stupid strap she'd pull over her heels. I know that sometimes she'd wear heels wearing those pants. And I used to ask her whenever I was little why. I thought it looked so silly. But she was so pretty. She was always the epitome of beautiful to me. Whether she had makeup on or not, even more so without it. She had a few freckles. She had, she didn't have the stuff that, like, comes out of her scalp. She didn't have falling out hair like I do. Her hair was, like, she always told me never get a perm. Because she tried to, tame her hair whenever she was younger. She had Hermione hair too. And she got a perm to try and fix it, and it went horribly. And she hated it. And she let it grow out, but it was always just, it wasn't anything that she wanted until it had grown out, like, a lot. And she was beautiful inside and out. It was like people who didn't even know her would just, it's almost like they were just compelled to look. She was so beautiful, and, like, she didn't even realize it. Someone could whistle and she wouldn't even realize that it was her they were whistling at. She would think that it was somebody else. Should she not? Like, this wasn't even an act with her. It wasn't like how sometimes I ignore stuff that people say. Mom really just didn't think that it was her. She just never crossed her mind. She was beautiful inside and out, and she was full of kindness, and she was very fierce. You did not touch her kids. She was very fierce, very loving. And I still remember the time that she pulled my little sister's dad off of me after she'd gotten us back, and we couldn't go to anyone to report it because they'd already proven that they didn't care and that they were just going to take us again. And they were constantly threatening Mom to make her go to church. She wasn't even Christian. I know that too. I'm probably one of only a couple people who even knows, like, that's still alive, that I know of. Unless there's other people that knew her in those circles, but my mom was forced to live a double life like that. But everything else is true about her. I mean, my mom wasn't a dishonest person. It actually destroyed her to do that and live like that. And they kept on forcing her to take him back. She would get rid of him, and they would force her to take him back, saying that they would take us if she didn't. And that contributed to it. He would not have had access to her to do that. To do anything that he did if they just left us alone. He was the reason why we were taken to begin with. And they made her take him back. The judge put it that he wasn't to be in the home, but the workers themselves decided to go against the judge's wishes and would continually do this, and eventually it led to my mom's death. He killed her. And this is sort of one of those things, like, we promised not to tell her, my little sister and me, because we don't want her to blame herself. But her dad is... I can't do this anymore right now. I'm sorry.